And so I open the car door and I get out and I turn around and I'm like, I call out to him. I'm like, Joel. And he like kind of looks at me and he kind of like shuffles over a little bit and he's like, yeah. I'm like, Joel. He's like, yeah. Like, it's Tyler, your brother. And he goes, whoa, like, what are you doing here? I'm like, we came to find you. He's like, why? And I got to tell him, because I love you. My brother was in the military, so he was in the Army, and he was in the process of getting out of the military. And on one of his leaves, he came to my house, and at the time I was pretty much running a flop house, party house, whatever you want to call it. He would come out and he, was started partying with us, and it was finally something where my brother and I were able to connect. When we were younger, we didn't really connect. We didn't really see eye to eye on a lot of things, and he was kind of off doing his own thing. But this was something that we had like a connection point on. Sad to say, it was like marijuana and ecstasy and just different drugs and drinking. And so my brother goes back from being on leave, and then I ended up having an encounter with the Lord shortly after that. This was like 2010. And so I had an encounter with the Lord and gave my life to Jesus. And then my brother wasn't, like I said, in the process of getting out of the military, and he got out on disability. And as soon as he gets out, he comes to me and he's like, all right, so like, you're my connection guy, like, where are the drugs at? And I'm like, oh, I'm done with that. Like, like, I have a relationship with Jesus now, like, that stuff is all gone. And he's like, no, like, it can't be gone. Like, you were my guy, like, you were my connection. And I'm like, yep, nope, not your guy. And so then we didn't have that thing to connect on anymore. My brother went and started like reaching out to some of my friends and just trying to, connect with people and trying to get different substances, different things like that. And eventually we just kind of stopped talking. He would occasionally come over to my parents' house, because after I had an encounter with the Lord and after I gave my life to Jesus, I kind of stopped doing all of the things that I was doing. I had, like detoxing, all of that stuff, and moved back to my parents' house. And so my brother would come over and he would just kind of antagonize me, just kind of pick on me and start to bring up things about my past and try and, get me to admit that I was doing other drugs that I had actually never touched. But they were substances and things that he had done. So he would come over and he would mess with me and say things, and I was just like, okay, like I didn't like it, but I would deal with it. And there was one night where like he came over and he was like super irate and just like fuming and just like drove to my parents' house. It was in the evening, like it was Veterans Day, and we had forgotten to wish him a happy Veterans Day. And it was something that was like really important to him. And we ended up getting into an altercation, and he ended up like punching me in the face. And then I went back into my parents' house, and then he went outside and like started slamming his head against the wall and tried to make this whole thing, and then called the cops and tried to tell the cops that I was the one that like beat him up, and he tried to like spin the story and everything. And at that point I was just like, you know what, like I'm done with this. Like I can't be around him. I don't want to see him. So I had a restraining order filed against him. In between the time of the incident and the court hearing, he was doing whatever he was doing, up to no good at that point. And he comes and he shows up and he's like dressed all in like his military uniform and everything, and he's like limping and walking with a cane, which I don't know where that came from. But he like tries to like put on this whole story for the judge to try and paint this bad picture of me. And like thankfully the judge like saw all through that stuff, and I didn't hold it against him or anything. Like I wasn't like mad. I was just like grateful, and I was relieved. I was just like, okay, like the judge is actually seeing this for what it is. And so that was 2013. And then my brother and I, we didn't talk after that, because I had the restraining order filed. I think it was supposed to be for like 3 or 4 years. Fast forward a bit, and I was overseas. I was serving in India, and there was an opportunity to preach, they would kind of do like rotating, preachers and things like that. And they're like, okay, Tyler, you're preaching. And it was in November, and Veterans Day had just passed. And God was speaking to me about reconciliation, and reconciliation amongst my family. It was actually reconciliation amongst my parents. So my mom and dad were divorced. They hadn't spoken for 2-3 years at that point. 3 years, I think 2013, they got separated, and my mom just like stopped talking to my dad. So there was a lot of like not talking in my family, between family members. My sister and my brother weren't talking. Like my brother and myself weren't talking. My parents weren't talking. And so they, I'm at this school of worship, and I'm getting ready to preach. And I'm like, okay, God, like, what do you want me to preach on? It's like, reconciliation. I'm like, okay. And then he shows me, like, you're not reconciled with your brother. And so I'm like, okay. So I reach out to him on Facebook Messenger, and I just wished him a happy Veterans Day, because it was Veterans Day. So I'm like, hey Joel, happy Veterans Day. I love you. And so then that like started this connection again in 2016. And we had, some back and forths. We had, basically there were Facebook messages. I was overseas in a lot of different areas where I had like no internet connection or anything. So while I was over there, I didn't stay connected with him. But once I got back, we had Facebook Messenger. And at one point he tells me, he's like, Tyler, I'm done with this. Like, I'm done with, this normal lifestyle. I'm gonna be one of those Skid Row kids. And so for those of you who don't know, Skid Row is like in Los Angeles, you have like high homeless population, people living on the streets, just real rough neighborhoods, things like that. And he's like, that's what I want. Like, that's what I'm gonna do. And I'm just like, okay, like, if that's what you wanna do. And so in 2018, early 2018, he moved out to Hawaii. He moved to Oahu, the island of Oahu. And he would post some things on Facebook, and just the kind of the punk rock scene. He had like a mohawk, the things he was doing, and talking about some sobriety. So I was kind of keeping tabs on him, and he had a season where he was going to like AA or NA, and so I'm like, oh, this is good. And he's telling me, he's like, yeah, like I'm sober, and I'm like encouraging him, I'm like, stick with that, like continue on in that. And then all of a sudden it was just like radio silence, just like didn't hear anything from him. He wasn't posting anything on Facebook, no Facebook Messenger posts, nothing like that. 2019, and then COVID 2020. I was at school in Chicago, and I had my things going on, and I hadn't heard anything from him. I started having these dreams, this recurring dream that we would like have an embrace, like we would hug. Like I would see him, and I just felt like everything was okay, and then like we would hug. And so this was like 2021, these dreams, and they would come like every few months or something like that. And I ended up getting married in 2021 to my wife, and I shared these dreams with her too, so she knew about it. Flash forward to 2023, my wife was pregnant with our daughter, and we were getting ready to go on a baby moon, and it just so happened to be like around the time of spring break, so it was in March. And so March of 2023, we're looking to go on this baby moon. We had a flight voucher. We ended up getting a flight voucher to fly to Hawaii, and then we ended up getting a place to stay for free there, which we would not have been able to travel to Hawaii really any other way. Financially, it was just not feasible for us to pay for that. So God had orchestrated all that for us to be able to go to Hawaii. And as soon as we booked our ticket, my mom sends me a message, and she's like, hey Ty, I know where Joel is. And I'm like, okay, like where's he at? And she's like, he's still on Oahu, but he's been using our home telephone number from when you guys were kids. He's been using it at certain like drugstores or like grocery stores and things like that. So like you type it in and you get your points off, or you get your rewards and stuff. So my mom has been like keeping tabs on my brother, and she ends up getting some like closed circuit footage from one of these stores. And she's like, hey, like I think this is your brother. Like, is this him? And she shows me this picture, and I'm like, yep, that's him. He's wearing a weird cow costume and has some backpack on, and still got the hair and everything. And so I'm like, okay, cool. Like he's doing okay. And I felt like God was like, go see him. go see him. Like, and so we're like, oh, okay, like this is an opportunity to like reconnect with him. And so we're like, all right, well, so we're gonna go to Oahu and we're just gonna find my brother. And so we ended up booking an island hopper from Maui to Oahu. Even our time staying in Oahu, we reached out to an alumni page for the World Race. So my wife and I did this 11-month mission trip called the World Race. It's with Adventures in Mission, and they have an alumni page for people who have gone on this trip. And so I was like, hey, is anybody living on Oahu that's got a room that we could crash in for a night or two? We're looking to find my brother. And we get this message back from a gal, and she's like, yeah, my husband and I, we're doctors. We're renting a place here. My husband's actually out of town right now, but we have a guest room. You guys can stay there. And so we got that all lined up. So all these things just start lining up. And so, we're like in our small group and we're like having them pray. We're like, okay, just pray like that the Lord leads us to my brother. And so one of our small group leader, the husband, he's like, when you first get there, he's like, check with the precinct, check with like the main precinct, as like your initial. And so we're like, okay, cool. We get there, we do the first part of the trip on Maui, and then we go to Oahu. We go and we get a rental car. And we're standing in line. We're in line for probably 45 minutes, an hour. Then we get the rental car. We go down to pick it up, and we drive into town. We drive into the main police precinct. We go and we park, and then we go up to go talk to somebody. And they had like these metal detectors. It was like you go up the stairs like to the main doors, but before you could go inside, they actually had metal detectors, and they actually had officers outside. So the officers were outside, and they're like, oh, like, hey, we need to check IDs and stuff. And so we're like, okay, cool. So like, and they're like, what are you doing? What are you doing here? I was like, I'm looking for my brother. Like, I'm here to file a missing person report. I was like, I don't know. I guess he's missing. We haven't seen him, but we haven't seen him in like 6-7 years. He moved here from the mainland. And the guy's like, oh, okay. He kind of rolled his eyes. So he's like, well, let me see your ID. Okay. I pull out my ID and I hand it to him. And the officer looks at it and he goes, no expletive, Joel Ward. And I'm like, yep. I was like, that's my brother. And he's like, oh yeah, I know that guy. I arrested him like 100 times. And so I was like, sounds about right. Okay. So he's like, okay. And he's like, yeah, he's like, your brother is not stupid. I was like, yeah, no, he's not. He's actually really smart. And he's like, yeah, he knows where to hang out. He's like, when he first got here, he had, some run-ins with people, but he's pretty smart now, the way that he like positions himself throughout Honolulu. The officer gives us a few leads, like, okay, he was hanging out in this spot, or he was hanging out over here. So my wife and I are like, all right, cool. So like, we're on this adventure. We're like trying to find my brother, and like, we're getting like step closer. And so we get in the car, and we have a few different, stops we could go to, and we're praying about it. We're like, okay, God, like, which one do you want us to go to? And we're like driving, and I remember it's kind of gridlocked there. There's a lot of cars. My wife's like, I think we're supposed to go over to this 7-Eleven first. So we're like, okay, cool. So we drive to this 7-Eleven. We're circling around, and we're going in the parking lot, and we pull in the parking lot, and I'm like, there's my brother. He's like standing right in front of the door. Mind you, I haven't seen him in person in about 10 years, 11 years actually. If the restraining order was 2012, then I hadn't seen him in 11 years. So it had been over a decade since I had seen him last. And I was just like, God, like, what do I do right now? Like, like I've had these dreams of like embracing all these things, but I had no idea of what I was really walking into. And so we're like sitting in this parking lot, and my wife is praying over me, and like I'm praying. I'm like, okay, God, like, you just please lead and guide this. And so I see in the rearview mirror, he's starting to kind of like hobble away. And so I open the car door and I get out and I turn around, and I'm like, I call out to him. I'm like, Joel. And he like kind of looks at me, and he kind of like shuffles over a little bit, and he's like, yeah. I'm like, Joel. He's like, yeah. Like, it's Tyler, your brother. And he goes, whoa, like, what are you doing here? I'm like, we came to find you. He's like, why? And I got to tell him, because I love you. And he just kind of like looked at me and he goes, I love you too. And I was like, can I have a hug? He's like, yeah. And so like we had that embrace. It was that like the dream that I had like over and over again fulfilled. Like I was able to hug my brother, and it was like all of the things, all of the tension, all of the issues that we had just melted away. Like they were all gone. They weren't there. I truly feel that, like on his end, on my end, you know. And we had like a brief conversation. I introduced him to my wife, and I was like, you're going to be an uncle. Like I know you're already an uncle, but you're going to be an uncle through me. We talked for a few minutes, and the officers had shared with us that, like, you know, he had been using some substances, or at least, you know, they were led to believe that he was using some substances. And when I had interactions with him, he wasn't all there. He wasn't super lucid at times. But yeah, you know, we had this little conversation, and he was asking about, you know, like my mom, and asking about our dad, and then had a little conversation about our sister too. And yeah, like it ended nicely. And you know, I started to share with him a little bit about, you know, my experiences with the Lord and about Jesus. And that kind of like, yeah, he kind of like, oh, well, I'm gonna go now. And he just like turns around and walks away. Yeah, you know, that was one of the last times I saw him. But I was grateful that we made that connection and we were able to reconcile. I let my mom know, I let my sister know, I let my dad know, and they were all kind of like, this is great. Like we can, you know, start this connection again. My mom was all about it. She ended up going and seeing him like a month later, still was keeping tabs on him, sending him like some care packages to the 7-Eleven. The ladies at the 7-Eleven were great. And, you know, sent him like a birthday care package and stuff. Flash forward 2 years. So to this year, 2025, my dad was like, yeah, let's go see him. And so I'm like, okay, cool. You just let me know when. The next week, it was our spring break. You know, it was our spring break. My wife and I are teachers. And so we were actually going up to visit my mom in Washington. So we went up to visit my mom in Washington, and I think it was like the second day we were there. We got a voicemail and saw like the video or the visual voicemail on my mom's phone. And it said the Honolulu medical examiner's office, and just start reading it. My mom immediately starts bawling. And everybody just kind of knew what was coming next. But I still had this peace, this weird peace, and I don't know what it is. I don't know how to explain it. I don't think it's denial or anything like that. You know, it's not like, I mean, I know that my brother's dead. Like I know that he's dead, but I had this strange peace, and I don't know if it's something like spiritually. Like I don't know what his relationship was with the Lord. In the last conversations that we had where he was kind of turned off by that, but ultimately, you know, the Lord can encounter people in any way he sees fit. You know, I don't know, maybe it's a peace that my brother made with the Lord, and I was getting a sense of that. You know, we were all there as a family. Like I was there with my mom, my wife, and baby, and you know, my stepdad, and then called my dad, my sister, niece, and we got everybody on the phone. We were able to kind of just talk through some things. And this was like kind of like the first time that everybody had really talked in probably like 15 years. Just kind of like, okay, processing, like, what do we do for services? Like, how do we best honor, you know, your brother? So just seeing, you know, even in the light of everything that happened, everything that went on, like my brother's passing, how those things still can bring people together. Like I'm still seeing reconciliation that's happening. You know, even up until a couple of weeks ago, like my niece ended up staying out and was able to spend time with grandpa, with my dad, that they haven't in, you know, decade and a half. There's good things that are coming out of this. I'm super grateful for that. I'm super grateful for, you know, those dreams that the Lord had given me, and actually speaking to me and my family about reconciliation. And at the time, I'm like, God, I have no idea what this is going to look like. My parents haven't talked. You're telling me they're going to reconcile, which they have. They've been on very good speaking terms now, and I'm, you know, eternally grateful for that too. I want to encourage anybody that's like holding out or waiting until the last minute to reconcile, yeah, we're not promised tomorrow. Like anything could happen, you know? And so don't delay. If you're thinking, oh, I'll put this off, I'll wait when things are more right in my life or whatever, like don't wait. There is gonna be uncomfortability, there's gonna be unknown, all of those things, but like just pray about it. And ultimately, like, our God is a God of reconciliation. That's what business He's in. And if you're seeking Him on it, He's gonna give you the wisdom and He's gonna give you the strength that you need to do it.